She fell to her knees at the stranger's gate, her frozen fingers clutching a silent baby against her chest. 5-month-old Rosie hadn't cried in 2 hours. Emma Whitmore knew what that silence meant. She'd heard it before in her mother's final breaths. 14 doors had slammed in her face. 14 times grown adults had looked at a 10-year-old girl carrying a dying infant and said no. This crooked gate hanging by rusted wire was her last chance. She pressed her cracked lips to her sister's cold forehead and whispered the only prayer she had left. "Take me instead. Please God, not her." Thank you for joining Emma's story. If her journey touches your heart, please subscribe and comment your city below. I want to see how far her story travels. Now let's begin. The gate creaked when Emma pushed through it. She didn't feel her feet anymore. Hadn't felt them since the creek crossing 3 miles back. That was probably bad. Mama would have said that was real bad. But Mama wasn't here to say anything anymore, and Emma had stopped thinking about what was bad and started thinking about what was necessary. Rosie stirred against her chest. A weak sound, not quite a cry. "I know, baby girl." Emma shifted her sister higher, feeling the tiny body shiver. "I know. We're almost there. Just hold on." The farmhouse ahead looked half dead. Peeling paint, dark windows, a barn tilting sideways like it was tired of standing. But smoke curled from the chimney. Smoke meant fire. Fire meant warmth. Warmth meant Rosie might live another hour. Emma's legs buckled on the porch steps. She caught herself on the railing, splinters biting into her palm. Didn't matter. Pain meant she was still alive. She raised her fist and knocked. The sound was pathetic, weak, like a bird hitting glass. She knocked again, harder this time. Her frozen knuckles screamed. "Please!" Her voice cracked. "Please, is anyone there?" Silence. Rosie made that sound again, that thin, reedy whimper that wasn't really crying. Babies cried when they had strength left to fight. This sound meant giving up. "Don't!" Emma pressed her lips to her sister's head. "Don't you dare give up on me." The door swung open. A man stood there. Tall, gray-streaked hair. Eyes the color of winter sky, cold and distant and empty. He wore a wool shirt, half-buttoned, and his jaw was covered in days of stubble. He looked like a man who'd forgotten how to care about anything at all. He stared at Emma like she was a ghost. "What in the—" He stopped. His gaze dropped to the bundle in her arms. "Is that a baby?" "Yes, sir." Emma's voice came out steady. She didn't know how. "This is my sister Rosie. She's 5 months old. She's hungry and cold and I ain't got anywhere else to go." The man's face didn't change. He stood there blocking the doorway, blocking the warmth, blocking everything that might save Rosie's life. "Where's your folks?" "Dead, sir. Mama passed in October. Never knew my daddy." "Relatives?" "My aunt sent us away." Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or recognition. But his voice stayed flat. "This ain't a charity house." "I ain't asking for charity." Emma lifted her chin. Every scrap of dignity she had left went into that gesture. "I'm asking for work. I can clean. I can cook. I can mend clothes and tend animals. I'm strong, sir. Stronger than I look." "You're a child." "I'm 10 years old, and I've been taking care of myself and my sister since Mama got sick. That's 8 months of cooking and cleaning and surviving." Emma's arms tightened around Rosie. "I don't need much. Just a roof and some milk for my sister. I'll earn everything else." The man's jaw worked. He looked past Emma out at the December sky, at the world that had clearly stopped making sense to him a long time ago. "I can't take in strays." "We ain't strays, sir. We're people." He flinched. Actually flinched like she'd hit him. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Emma felt her strength draining away, felt her legs shaking, felt the weight of 3 days and 40 miles crushing down on her shoulders. If he said no, she didn't know what she'd do. There was nowhere else. This was the end of the road. Rosie let out another weak cry. The man's eyes dropped to the baby, and something in his face cracked open, something he'd been holding together for a long, long time. When's the last time she ate? Yesterday morning, a woman in town gave us some goat's milk, but it ran out. Yesterday. His voice sharpened. She's been without food for over a day. I tried, sir. I tried everything, but nobody would. Emma's voice broke. She forced it back together. Nobody would help us. The man stepped aside. Get in here, now. Emma didn't hesitate. She stumbled through the doorway into warmth that felt like heaven, into a house that smelled like wood smoke and loneliness. Her legs gave out the moment she crossed the threshold, and she crashed to her knees, still clutching Rosie against her chest. I'm sorry. The words tumbled out. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Stop apologizing. The man was already moving, grabbing a pot from the shelf. When's the last time you ate? Emma tried to remember. The stale biscuit from the store owner 2 days ago. Before that, scraps from behind a hotel. I don't know, sir. You don't know. His voice was rough, but not angry. More like he was angry at something else. Something bigger than her. You've been walking in this weather with a baby. No food, no shoes. He stopped, turned around slowly. Where are your shoes? Wore through 3 days back. He stared at her. Emma saw herself through his eyes, a skeleton of a girl with tangled hair and hollow cheeks, holding a bundle of rags that contained the only family she had left. Jesus Christ, he muttered. Please don't blaspheme, sir. Mama wouldn't like it. Something crossed his face. Not quite a smile, but close. Your mama sounds like she was a particular woman. She was the best woman I ever knew. He turned back to the stove. His movements were different now, more purposeful. I got goat's milk in the cellar. Needs warming. You know how to feed a baby that young? Yes, sir. Been doing it since she was born. Then sit tight. Don't move from that spot. He disappeared through a door at the back of the kitchen. Emma heard his boots on wooden steps descending into darkness. She looked down at Rosie, at the tiny face that was everything left of her mother, everything left of home. We made it somewhere, Rosie girl, she whispered. We made it somewhere. The man returned with a jug of milk and a clean cloth. He poured some into the pot and set it on the stove to warm his movements. Careful, practiced like he'd done this before. What's your name? He asked without turning around. Emma Catherine Whitmore. My sister is Rosalie Ann Whitmore. Whitmore. He tested the word. Where'd you come from? Missouri, sir. Mama brought us to Omaha after she got sick, stayed with her sister. Emma couldn't keep the bitterness out of her voice. My Aunt Cordelia. She didn't want us. Nobody just doesn't want a baby. She said we was too expensive, too much trouble. Her husband didn't want children in the house. Emma stroked Rosie's cheek. She gave us coach fare to the county orphanage and put us on a stage. The man turned around. You ran away from a coach. Yes, sir. Why? Because I heard what happens to babies in orphanages. Emma met his eyes. Didn't flinch. They separate siblings, send them to different families, sometimes to factories. She pulled Rosie closer. I ain't losing my sister. Not ever. Something shifted in the man's expression, something that looked almost like respect. So you decided to walk across Nebraska in December instead. I decided to find a place where we could stay together, where I could work for our keep and Rosie could be safe. Emma's chin lifted. This is the 15th door I knocked on, sir. Yours is the first one that opened. The milk was warm. The man tested it on his wrist, that gesture so familiar, so practiced, then handed her the pot and the cloth. Feed her. We'll figure out the rest after. Emma didn't argue. She dipped the cloth in the milk and brought it to Rosie's lips. The baby latched on weakly at first, then with growing strength, as she realized food had finally come. Her tiny fists unclenched. Her small body relaxed. Emma felt tears streaming down her face. Couldn't stop them. All the fear, all the exhaustion, all the desperate hope of the past 3 days came pouring out. "She's eating," she gasped. "She's really eating." The man said nothing. He just stood there watching. When Rosie had drunk her fill and fallen into proper sleep, the good kind with pink cheeks and steady breathing, Emma finally looked up. "Thank you, sir. I don't know how to—" "Jacob." His voice was gruff. "Name's Jacob Hartwell. You can stop calling me sir." "Thank you, Mr. Hartwell." "Just Jacob." He grabbed a chair and set it by the stove. "Sit down before you fall down." Emma obeyed, sinking into the chair with Rosie still cradled against her chest. The warmth seeped into her frozen bones. For the first time in days, she felt something other than fear. Jacob moved around the kitchen, pulling out bread and dried meat and a jar of preserves. He set a plate in front of her without ceremony. "Eat slow. Don't make yourself sick." Emma picked up the bread with trembling fingers. The first bite was so good she almost cried again. "I meant what I said," she managed between mouthfuls. "About working. I ain't looking for charity." "Heard you the first time. I just want you to know, I'll earn my keep. Whatever needs doing, I can do it." Jacob sat down across from her. His eyes studied her face. "You got frostbite on your feet. Probably on your fingers, too. You're half-starved and exhausted. That baby needs feeding every few hours for the next several days just to get her strength back." Emma's stomach dropped. "You saying you won't let us stay?" "I'm saying you ain't in no condition to work. Not today. Not tomorrow. Maybe not for a week. Then I'll owe you. I'll work twice as hard when I'm better. I'll—" "Stop." Jacob held up a hand. "Just stop." Emma fell silent. Her heart pounded. Jacob rubbed his face with both hands. He looked older than his years. Tired in a way that went deeper than sleep could fix. "I ain't had another person in this house in 3 years, he said slowly. "Haven't wanted one. Haven't needed one." "Then why'd you let us in?" The question hung between them. Jacob's eyes dropped to Rosie sleeping peacefully in Emma's arms. "Because my wife would have skinned me alive if I left you out in that snow." "Your wife?" "Margaret. Maggie." His voice roughened. "She died 3 years ago." "I'm sorry." "Me too." Jacob stood abruptly, moving to the window. "Had a son too. William. He left 5 years back. We had a fight. Said things we couldn't take back." He paused. "Ain't seen him since." Emma understood then. The empty house, the crooked gate, the look in his eyes like he'd forgotten how to be alive. "You lost everyone." "Yep." "So did I." Jacob turned around. Their eyes met two broken people recognizing something in each other. Grief. Loneliness. The desperate, stubborn will to keep breathing even when breathing hurt. "1 week," Jacob said finally. "You can stay 1 week. Give you time to heal up, get your strength back, figure out where you're going next. And after that we'll see." It wasn't a promise. It wasn't even hope, but it was something. "Thank you, Jacob," he grunted, turning away. "There's a room at the back of the house. It was—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "It was my son's room. You and the baby can sleep there." Emma stood carefully, Rosie still sleeping against her chest. "I truly am grateful. For everything." "Don't be grateful yet. You ain't seen the room." But when Jacob opened the door, Emma felt her breath catch. The room was small, but clean. A real bed with a faded quilt. A window looking out over fields. A wooden trunk against one wall. On the nightstand sat a photograph, a young man with dark hair and serious eyes standing next to a woman with a gentle smile. "That's William," Jacob said from behind her. "And Maggie. They're beautiful." They were. Emma turned to face him, this broken man who had opened his door when everyone else had closed theirs. "I won't let you down, Jacob. Whatever happens, I want you to know that. Something crossed his face, too quick to name. Just get some rest. We'll talk more in the morning. He pulled the door closed behind him. Emma stood alone in the quiet room. She crossed to the bed and laid Rosie down gently, tucking the quilt around her tiny body. The baby's face was peaceful now, content. "We're safe, Rosie girl," Emma whispered. "For now we're safe." She climbed onto the bed next to her sister, too exhausted to take off her coat, too tired to do anything but curl around Rosie's small form and let her eyes close. And down the hall, Jacob Hartwell sat by his dying fire, with his head in his hands, wondering what he'd just done. Morning came gray and cold. Emma woke before dawn, her body's habit from months of caring for Rosie overriding her exhaustion. The baby was still sleeping, breathing steady color, better than it had been in days. Emma slipped out of bed, quietly wincing as her feet touched the floor. The pain was sharper now, which meant feeling was returning. Jacob had been right about the frostbite. She could see it, the angry red and white patches on her toes, the blisters forming on her heels. She ignored it. There was work to do. The kitchen was dark when she crept down the hallway, but she heard movement somewhere in the house. Jacob probably, doing whatever ranchers did before sunrise. Emma found matches and lit the stove, coaxing the coals back to life. She located the coffee and the pot, working from memory. Her mother's kitchen, her aunt's kitchen, all the kitchens where she'd learned to make herself useful. By the time Jacob appeared in the doorway, the coffee was ready, and Emma was wiping down the table. He stopped dead. "What are you doing?" "Making coffee." Emma didn't look up. "And cleaning. This table's got a month of dust on it." "I told you to rest." "I rested." She finally met his eyes. "Now I'm earning my keep." Jacob's jaw worked. "Your feet. Will heal faster if I keep moving. That's what Mama always said." "Your mama ever have frostbite?" "No, sir. But she had plenty of other things. She worked through all of them." Something in Jacob's expression shifted. Not quite approval, but close. He moved past her to pour himself coffee, his movements stiff, careful. "Baby still sleeping. She'll wake up hungry soon. Milk's warming on the back of the stove." Emma looked. A pot sat there, steam rising gently. Jacob had gotten up before her, had already started preparing for Rosie. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Don't mention it." He sat down at the table, wrapping his hands around the coffee cup. "You always wake up this early. Rosie needs feeding every 4 hours. After a while, your body just knows. Even when you're half dead from walking 40 miles. Especially then. Babies don't care if you're tired. They just need what they need." Jacob studied her over the rim of his cup. "How'd you end up the one taking care of her? You said your mama got sick, but that was before the baby was born." "Mama got sick right after Rosie came. The birth was hard. She never really recovered." Emma's voice stayed steady, but her hands found the edge of the counter and gripped tight. "I did everything I could. Kept the house clean, cooked the meals, took care of Rosie so Mama could rest." Her voice dropped. "Wasn't enough. Some things ain't about enough." "I know." Emma turned around. "I know it wasn't my fault. Mama told me that at the end. Said I'd done everything right. That she was proud of me. That I had to keep going no matter what." She met his eyes. "But sometimes knowing something and feeling it are two different things." Jacob was quiet for a long moment. "My wife said something similar," he finally said. "At the end. Told me not to blame myself for things I couldn't control." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Didn't listen to her then. Still ain't sure I listen to her now." "Maybe that's why you opened the door." "What do you mean?" Emma chose her words carefully. "Maybe you needed to help someone else. To stop punishing yourself." Jacob's cup stopped halfway to his mouth. He stared at her, this 10-year-old girl who talked like she'd lived 100 years. "You're too young to be this wise." And you're too stubborn to be this kind. But here we are." Despite everything, Jacob's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "You got a mouth on you." Mama said that too, usually right before she told me to hush. Smart woman. The smartest. Rosie's cry cut through the quiet, thin and hungry. Emma moved immediately, but Jacob's voice stopped her. "I'll get the milk. You get the baby." They worked together in the gray morning light. Two strangers falling into a rhythm that felt strangely natural. Emma fed Rosie while Jacob made breakfast eggs and bread and more preserves, simple food, but more than Emma had eaten in weeks. When Rosie was fed and changed and sleeping again, Emma looked at Jacob across the table. "What needs doing today?" "Nothing you need to worry about." "Jacob." She said his name firmly. "I told you I'd work. Let me work." He sighed, running a hand through his gray-streaked hair. "Fine. There's mending needs doing. Shirts with torn seams. Socks with holes. Maggie used to handle that, and I never learned proper. I can do that. There's also the kitchen. Ain't really cleaned it since..." He stopped. "Since your wife died." "Yeah." "Then I'll clean it. And the windows could use washing. And the floors need sweeping." She paused. "I ain't judging. It's hard to take care of a house when there ain't no one left to take care of it for." Jacob looked at her for a long moment, and something in his expression cracked open. Just a sliver, but enough to let a little light in. "You sure you're only 10? Some days I feel like I'm 100. "Yeah." His voice was rough. "I know that feeling." They finished breakfast in comfortable silence. Then Emma got to work. By noon, the kitchen was transformed. Emma had scrubbed every surface, washed every dish, swept the floor, until the old wood gleamed. She'd organized the pantry, cleared out the stale bread and the moldy preserves, started a list of supplies they'd need. Jacob came in from outside and stopped in the doorway, staring. "You did all this?" "Yes." Emma wiped her hands on her apron, one of Maggie's she'd found hanging in the pantry. "Is it all right? I hope it's okay. I know it might be hard seeing it different." "No." Jacob's voice was thick. It's good. It's real good. I found the mending basket too. I'll start on that after lunch." "After lunch?" He moved to the stove where a pot of soup was simmering, soup Emma had made from what she found in the cellar. "You made this?" "Mama's recipe. Well, close to it. Didn't have all the right ingredients." Jacob ladled soup into 2 bowls and sat down. He took a bite and something crossed his face. Something painful and sweet all at once. "It's good." "Thank you." They ate in silence, but it was a different silence than before. Softer, less lonely. After lunch, Emma settled into the rocking chair by the fire with the mending basket, while Rosie slept in a nest of blankets nearby. Jacob watched her work, her small fingers moving the needle with practiced precision. "Where'd you learn to sew like that?" "Mama was a seamstress. Taught me everything she knew." Emma held up the shirt she was mending, examining her stitches. "Said a girl who could sew would never starve." "She teach you to cook too, and clean, and garden, and keep accounts." Emma smiled sadly. "She wanted me ready for anything." Sounds like she knew she wouldn't be around forever. The words hung in the air. "I think she did." Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "I think she knew from the moment she got sick that she wasn't gonna get better. But she didn't want me to be scared, so she just prepared me. Every day she taught me something new. Every day she told me she loved me." Jacob was quiet for a long moment. "She sounds like she was a good mother." "The best." Emma resumed her sewing, blinking back tears. "I miss her every day. Every single day." "That never goes away, the missing." "No. No." Jacob's voice was rough. "But it changes. Gets easier to carry after a while. Like a stone you learn to hold in your pocket instead of your hand. Emma thought about that. I'd like to believe that. Give it time. Rosie stirred in her blankets, letting out a small cry. Emma was up immediately, lifting the baby to her shoulder, murmuring soft words. Shh, Rosie girl, I'm here. Big sister's right here. Jacob watched them, something unreadable in his expression. She's lucky, he said finally, to have you. We're lucky to have each other. Emma met his eyes. That's what Mama always said. Family ain't about blood. It's about the people who show up, the people who stay. Jacob looked away, his jaw tight. My son didn't stay. Maybe he wanted to. Maybe he just didn't know how. That's generous. It's honest. Emma settled back into the rocking chair, Rosie quieting against her chest. People make mistakes when they're hurting. Doesn't mean they stop loving each other. Just means they forgot how to show it. Jacob stood abruptly, moving to the window. His back was to her, his shoulders tense. You don't know what happened between us. No, but I know you kept his room exactly the way he left it. I know his pictures on your nightstand. I know you opened your door to two strangers because your wife would have wanted you to. Emma's voice was gentle. That ain't a man who stopped caring. That's a man who don't know what to do with all the caring he's got left. Jacob didn't move for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. How do you do that? Do what? See right through people. Mama used to say I had old eyes. Said I must have lived 100 lives before this one. Jacob turned around. His eyes were bright, but not with tears, with something else. Something like hope buried deep and fighting its way to the surface. 1 week, he said. That's what I promised. I remember. Might have to make it 2. Emma felt her heart lift. Might have to. Jacob nodded once, gruff and awkward, then headed for the door. I'll be in the barn. Call if you need anything. Jacob. He paused, hand on the frame. Thank you. For everything. He didn't answer, but as he walked out into the cold December afternoon, Emma could have sworn she saw him smile. The first week passed in a blur of work and healing. Emma's feet mended slowly. The angry red faded to pink, then to something close to normal. She still winced when she walked, but she walked anyway. There was too much to do to stay still. Rosie grew stronger every day. Her cries got louder, her appetite fiercer. She started gaining weight, started looking like a proper baby, instead of a tiny, fragile thing that might break at any moment. And Jacob was changing too. Emma saw it in small ways. The way he lingered at breakfast instead of rushing out to the barn. The way he asked about Rosie's feeding schedule. The way he sometimes caught himself smiling before remembering he wasn't supposed to. You're staring, Emma said on the 4th morning, not looking up from the biscuit she was rolling out. Jacob, startled. Wasn't staring. You've been standing in that doorway for 5 minutes. I was thinking. About what? He was quiet for a moment. Then, Maggie used to make biscuits like that. Same way. Rolling them out real careful, cutting them just so. Emma's hands stilled. I can stop. If it's too... No. His voice was rough. No, don't stop. It's good to see. Good to remember. She went back to rolling. Tell me about her. Maggie. What do you want to know? Whatever you want to tell. Jacob moved to the table and sat down heavily. He was quiet for so long that Emma thought he wouldn't answer. Then he started talking. Met her at a church social in '52. I was 20 years old and dumber than a box of rocks. She was 17 and the prettiest girl I'd ever seen. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. She wouldn't give me the time of day. Said I was too full of myself. Were you? Lord, yes. Thought I was God's gift to Nebraska territory. He shook his head. Took me 2 years to convince her I was worth her time. 2 years of showing up at her daddy's farm, helping with the harvest, fixing fences. Her pa thought I was crazy. What changed her mind? Her sister got sick, real sick. Scarlet fever. I rode 30 miles in a blizzard to fetch the doctor, nearly froze to death doing it. Jacob's voice softened. When I woke up, Maggie was sitting by my bed. She'd been there for 3 days straight. That's when I knew. Knew what? That she loved me, even if she was too stubborn to say it. Emma smiled. She sounds like me. She was nothing like you. But Jacob's tone held no rebuke. She was soft where you're hard, gentle where you're fierce, but she had the same eyes, old eyes, like she'd seen things most people never see. Rosie chose that moment to cry a healthy, lusty wail that filled the kitchen. Emma wiped her hands on her apron and moved toward the bedroom. I got her, Jacob said, standing. You finish those biscuits. Emma froze. You sure? I held babies before. William wasn't always grown. He disappeared down the hall. Emma listened to his heavy footsteps, then his low voice murmuring something she couldn't hear. Rosie's crying stopped, just like that. When Jacob came back, he was holding the baby against his chest like it was the most natural thing in the world. Rosie had her tiny fist wrapped around his finger, her eyes wide and curious. She's got a grip, Jacob said gruffly, strong for her size. She's a fighter. She'd have to be, coming from where she came from. Emma slid the biscuits into the oven and turned to face him. Jacob, can I ask you something? Depends on what it is. Your son, William. She hesitated. What did you fight about? The change in Jacob was immediate. His shoulders stiffened. His jaw went tight. For a moment, Emma thought he would hand Rosie back and walk out. But he didn't. He wanted to leave, Jacob said finally. Go east, make something of himself, said there was nothing for him here. And you disagreed. This land is everything. Maggie and I built it from nothing. Every fence post, every beam in this house, we put it there with our own hands. I thought... He stopped, swallowed. I thought if he left, he was saying none of that mattered, that we didn't matter. Is that what he was saying? I don't know. I was too angry to ask. Jacob looked down at Rosie, his voice dropping. I said things, terrible things, called him ungrateful, said if he walked out that door he shouldn't bother coming back. And he walked out. He walked out, 5 years ago. Haven't heard from him since. Jacob's voice cracked. Maggie died without seeing him again. That's on me. That's my fault. Emma crossed the kitchen and stood in front of him. She reached up and put her hand on his arm, a child's gesture simple and sincere. You made a mistake, she said quietly. A terrible one. But holding on to it won't bring her back. Won't bring him back either. Then what will... I don't know. But carrying all that guilt? She shook her head. It's like trying to fill a hole by digging it deeper. It don't work. You just end up buried. Jacob stared at her. His eyes were wet. How do you know these things? You're 10 years old. I watched my mama die. Emma's voice was steady. I watched her fight for every breath for 6 months, knowing she wasn't gonna win. You learn things watching something like that. You learn what matters and what don't. Rosie gurgled happily, breaking the moment. Jacob looked down at her, and something in his face softened. She needs changing, he said gruffly. I'll do it. No. He shifted the baby to his other arm. I got it. You watch those biscuits. He walked away before Emma could argue. She stood there in this quiet kitchen, listening to his footsteps fade down the hall, and felt something shift in her chest, something that felt like hope. On the 6th day, Jacob made an announcement. I'm going into town tomorrow. Need supplies. Emma looked up from the sock she was darning. Do you want me to make a list? Already got one. But I was thinking. He paused, rubbing the back of his neck. Thinking maybe you and the baby should come. Get some fresh air. See the town. You want us to come with you? If you want. Don't have to. His voice was gruff, almost defensive. Just thought folks should know you're here, in case they can help with the baby. Ruth Brennan, she's got experience with infants. And there's a doctor in town case Rosie needs looking at. Emma understood what he wasn't saying. If she was going to stay, she needed to be part of the community. She needed people who knew her, who could vouch for her, who would stand with her if Aunt Cordelia came calling. "I'd like that," she said quietly. "Thank you." Jacob nodded, but didn't meet her eyes. "We'll leave at first light. Bundle up warm, both of you." The wagon creaked through the frozen road's wheels, cutting tracks in the hard-packed dirt. Emma sat on the bench next to Jacob, Rosie bundled tight against her chest beneath her coat. Both of them were wrapped in a heavy wool blanket Jacob had pulled from a trunk that morning. "Cold?" Jacob asked without looking at her. "A little. But it's nice to be outside. Been cooped up too long?" "Week ain't that long." "Felt longer." He glanced at her sideways. "House has been different, having you there." Emma wasn't sure if that was a compliment or a complaint, so she said nothing. She just watched the landscape roll by the endless white fields, broken only by fence posts and bare trees. "Jacob." "Yeah. What's the town like, the people?" He was quiet for a moment. "Some are good, some ain't, same as anywhere." "Will they—" She hesitated. "Will they accept us?" "Some will, some won't." He looked at her directly. "But that ain't your concern. Anyone gives you trouble, they answer to me." "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." His voice was firm. "You're under my roof. That means you're under my protection. Anyone got a problem with that, they can take it up with me." Emma felt warmth spread through her chest despite the cold. "Thank you." "Stop thanking me. You'll wear the words out." The first buildings appeared on the horizon, a handful of structures clustered around a main street. Miller's Crossing wasn't much to look at, but to Emma, it might as well have been a city. "Stay close to me," Jacob said as they approached. "Folks around here can be particular about strangers. I know how to handle particular folks. I'm sure you do. But let me do the talking first." The wagon rolled down the main street past a general store, a blacksmith, a small church with a crooked steeple. People stopped to stare as they passed. Emma felt their eyes on her curious, suspicious measuring. "Here we go," Jacob muttered. He pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the general store and climbed down. He came around to Emma's side and held up his hands. "Give me the baby, then climb down." Emma hesitated. She hadn't let anyone else hold Rosie since their mother died. But something in Jacob's expression, patient, steady, made her trust him. She transferred Rosie carefully into his arms. His face softened, just for a moment. "She's light," he said. "She's gaining. Every day a little more." Emma climbed down from the wagon. Jacob handed Rosie back and she tucked the baby against her chest. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready." They walked into the store together. The inside smelled like coffee and leather and sawdust. Shelves lined the walls, packed with everything from canned goods to farming tools. A pot-bellied stove sat in the center, and several people clustered around it. Their conversation dying the moment Jacob and Emma walked in. The man behind the counter was thin and balding with spectacles on his nose. He straightened when he saw Jacob. "Hartwell, haven't seen you in town in weeks. Been busy?" Jacob moved toward the counter. "Need supplies. Got a list." The shopkeeper's eyes slid to Emma, then to the bundle in her arms. "Who's this?" "Emma Whitmore. She's staying with me." A murmur rippled through the people by the stove. Emma felt their stares like pinpricks. "Staying with you?" The shopkeeper's eyebrows rose. "Jacob, you can't just—" "I can do whatever I want on my own land." Jacob's voice was flat, brooking no argument. "Now you gonna fill my order or not?" The shopkeeper opened his mouth, then closed it. He took the list and disappeared into the back room. Emma stood very still. Every eye in the store was fixed on her. A woman by the stove leaned toward her companion and whispered something. The companion nodded, her expression disapproving. "Excuse me." An older woman with gray hair and kind eyes stepped forward. "I'm Ruth Brennan. Live about 3 miles east of Jacob's place." Emma recognized the name. Jacob had mentioned her. "Ma'am." She dipped her head politely. "Jacob's told me about you." "Has he now? May I see the baby?" Emma hesitated, then shifted Rosie so the older woman could see her face. Ruth leaned in, studying the infant with practiced eyes. "She's small." "How old?" "5 months." "And you're her sister?" "Yes, ma'am, I'm 10. Our mama died in October." Ruth's expression softened with sympathy. "Poor lamb, both of you." She looked at Jacob. "You're doing a good thing taking them in." "Wasn't planning on it." Jacob's voice was gruff. "Just sort of happened. The best things usually do." Ruth turned back to Emma. "You need anything for that baby, you come to me. Raised 6 children. Helped birth a dozen more. I know what little ones need." "Thank you, ma'am. That's very kind." The whispers by the stove had grown louder. Emma caught fragments. Stranger. No family. Living alone with him. Jacob heard it too. His jaw tightened. "Something you want to say?" He called out, his voice sharp. "Because if you got opinions about my business, I'd prefer you say them to my face." Silence fell. A thin woman with a pinched face stepped forward. "We're just concerned, Jacob. You've been alone out there for 3 years. Now suddenly you've got a child living with you, and a baby. It's not proper." "Not proper." Jacob's voice was cold. "This girl walked 40 miles through a blizzard to save her sister's life. She showed up at my door half dead, begging for work, not charity work." He stepped toward the woman, and she flinched back. "She's got more courage in her little finger than most of the people in this room have in their whole bodies. So don't talk to me about proper." The woman's face went red. "I didn't mean—" "Yeah, you did." Jacob turned away. "Emma, come on. We'll wait outside for the order." He strode toward the door, and Emma hurried after him. She could feel the stairs following them, hear the whispers starting up again. Outside, Jacob stood by the wagon, hands clenched into fists. "I'm sorry," Emma said quietly. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." "You didn't cause anything. Small-minded people cause their own trouble. You just gave them something to talk about. Maybe it'd be better if I stayed at the farm, when you come to town." "No." Jacob turned to face her, his expression fierce. "You don't hide because people are ignorant. You stand up straight and look them in the eye and dare them to say something." His voice softened. "That's what Maggie would have said." And she was right. Emma thought about her mother, all the times Harriet had faced down landlords and creditors and people who looked at a woman alone with a child and saw someone to take advantage of. "My mama would have said the same thing." "Then listen to both of them." The store door opened, and Ruth Brennan emerged carrying a wrapped package. "Emma dear, I brought you something." She handed over the package. "Some clothes for the baby. My youngest grandchild outgrew them. Not new, but warm and clean." Emma felt tears prick at her eyes. "Mrs. Brennan, I can't." "You can and you will." Ruth's voice was firm but kind. "We take care of each other out here. That's how we survive." "Thank you. Thank you so much." Ruth smiled, then turned to Jacob. "Bring these girls to church on Sunday. Let folks get to know them proper. It'll help." "I ain't been to church since Maggie's funeral." "Then it's past time you went." She patted his arm. "Maggie would want you there. You know she would." Jacob's jaw worked, but he didn't argue. The shopkeeper emerged with their supplies, loading them into the wagon without eye contact. Jacob paid in silence, then helped Emma up onto the bench. As they pulled away from the store, Emma looked back at Ruth Brennan, standing on the wooden sidewalk, her hand raised in farewell. "She's nice, Emma said. She is. Her husband died about 10 years back. She knows what it's like, being alone. That's why she's kind to us. Probably. Jacob flicked the reins. Suffering either makes people cruel or makes them gentle. Depends on what's inside them to begin with. Emma thought about Aunt Cordelia. About the hardness in her eyes when she'd put them on that coach. About the cold way she'd said, "I've done my duty. The rest is up to you." What was inside my aunt? I don't know. But whatever it wasn't enough. They rode in silence for a while. Rosie slept peacefully against Emma's chest. Jacob. Yeah. Why did you stand up for me like that in the store? He didn't answer right away. Because someone should, he finally said. Because those people in there, they don't know what you've been through. They see a stranger and they make up stories, fill in the blanks with their own fears. He glanced at her. I did the same thing, that first day when you showed up at my gate. But you let us in anyway. Yeah, I did. His voice was rough. Starting to think it was the smartest thing I'd done in years. Emma felt warmth spread through her chest. Thank you for saying that. Don't thank me. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep making that house feel alive again. I will. And come to church on Sunday. Emma smiled. Yes, sir. Don't call me sir. Sorry. Habit. Jacob shook his head, but she could see the corner of his mouth twitching. Progress. The farm came into view as the sun climbed toward noon. Jacob helped Emma down from the wagon, and this time, instead of just holding out his hands for the baby, he offered her his arm. Welcome home, he said gruffly. Emma took his arm and stepped down Rosie secure against her chest. Home, she repeated. Such a small word for such a big thing. Thank you, Jacob. Go inside. Get warm. I'll handle the horses. Emma walked toward the house. At the door, she turned back. Jacob was unhitching the horses, his movements slow and deliberate. He looked up, caught her watching. For a moment, they just looked at each other across the yard. Then Jacob nodded once, and Emma smiled, and something shifted between them. Something important. She went inside into the warmth, into the home she was slowly making theirs. That night, after Rosie was asleep and the house had fallen quiet, Jacob sat by the fire with a piece of paper in his hands. He'd been sitting there for an hour. The page was still blank. Emma appeared in the doorway. Can't sleep. Could ask you the same. She crossed to the chair across from him and sat down, pulling her knees to her chest. What are you doing? Nothing. That piece of paper says different. Jacob looked at the blank page. His hands were trembling slightly. I was thinking about writing to William. Emma's breath caught. Your son. Don't know where he is. Don't even know if he'd read it. But... He stopped, swallowed hard. What you said, about not being able to fill a hole by digging it deeper. You remembered that. Hard to forget. He met her eyes. You think he'd want to hear from me? After everything. I think... Emma chose her words carefully. I think there's only one way to find out. What if it's too late? What if it ain't? Jacob stared at her. This 10-year-old girl who spoke like she'd lived 100 years, who had walked 40 miles through a blizzard with a baby in her arms, who had knocked on 15 doors and refused to give up. You make it sound simple. It ain't simple, but it is necessary. Emma leaned forward. Jacob, you taught me something this week. You taught me that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is open a door. You opened yours for me and Rosie. Maybe it's time to open another one. Jacob looked down at the paper, at the pen in his hand, at the blank space waiting to be filled. What would I even say? Start with the truth. Tell him you're sorry. Tell him you miss him. Tell him you were wrong. Emma's voice was gentle. The rest will come. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Jacob put pen to paper and began to write. Dear William, I don't know if this letter will reach you. Don't know if you'll read it if it does. But I'm writing anyway because I spent 5 years not saying the things I should have said, and I'm tired of carrying that weight. Emma watched him write, watched the words pour out of him like water from a broken dam. She didn't speak, didn't need to. Sometimes the best thing you could do for someone was just be there while they found their way. When Jacob finally set down the pen, his face was wet with tears he hadn't bothered to wipe away. I did it, he said, his voice cracking. You did it. Don't know if it'll make any difference. It already has. Emma stood and crossed to him. She put her hand on his shoulder, that same simple, sincere gesture. You took the first step. That's always the hardest one. Jacob reached up and covered her hand with his own. His grip was strong, warm. Thank you, Emma. For what? For showing up. For staying. He looked at her, his eyes bright. For not giving up on me. Emma smiled. You didn't give up on us either. Almost did. But you didn't. That's what counts. They sat together by the dying fire, a broken man and a brave girl, holding on to the fragile thread of hope they'd woven together. And somewhere out there in a city, neither of them had ever seen a young man named William Hartwell was about to receive a letter that would change everything. The letter went out on a Tuesday morning. Jacob handed it to the mail rider himself, watching until the man disappeared over the horizon. Then he stood at the gate for a long time, hands shoved deep in his pockets, staring at the empty road. Emma found him there an hour later. He ain't gonna write back today, she said gently. These things take time. I know. Then come inside. Rosie's been fussing. She settles better when you hold her. Jacob turned one eyebrow raised. She's 5 months old. She don't know the difference. She knows. Emma smiled. Babies always know. Despite himself, Jacob followed her back to the house. The days that followed were strange, hopeful, and terrifying all at once. Every morning, Jacob found himself watching the road. Every afternoon, he told himself to stop. Every evening, he watched again anyway. Emma pretended not to notice. She kept the house running, kept Rosie fed, kept filling the silence with her quiet presence. But she noticed everything. You're wearing a hole in that floor, she said on the 4th day, watching Jacob pace by the window. Ain't pacing. You been back and forth 12 times in the last 10 minutes. I counted. Jacob stopped, ran a hand through his hair. What if he throws it away? What if he don't even open it? Then you wrote it anyway. That counts for something. Does it? It does to me. Emma looked up from the bread she was kneading. My mama wrote me a letter before she died. I didn't find it until after. It was hidden in her sewing box. Jacob went still. What did it say? That she was proud of me. That she knew I'd take care of Rosie. That she was sorry she couldn't stay longer. Emma's hands paused in the dough. I read it every night for a month. Still read it sometimes when things get hard. Do you have it with you? It's in my bag. The only thing I brought from home that matters. Jacob was quiet for a long moment. Then he crossed to the table and sat down heavily. Maggie wrote to William too, after our fight. She didn't tell me until she was dying. His voice cracked. She said she begged him to come home. Said she told him I didn't mean the things I said. Did he write back? I don't know. She never said. And I was too much of a coward to ask. Emma wiped her hands on her apron and sat down across from him. You ain't a coward, Jacob. Cowards don't send letters. Cowards don't open their doors to strangers. Cowards don't try. Then what am I? Human. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Just human. same as the rest of us." A knock at the door made them both jump. Jacob was on his feet instantly, his hand reaching for the rifle above the fireplace. Nobody knocked on his door. Not without warning. Not without reason. "Stay here," he muttered. "Keep Rosie quiet." He crossed to the door and pulled it open. Ruth Brennan stood on the porch, her face pale, her hands twisting together. "Ruth." Jacob frowned. "What's wrong?" "Jacob, I came as fast as I could. There's news from town." She glanced past him to Emma. "News you both need to hear. Come in." Jacob stepped aside. "What kind of news?" Ruth entered, her eyes darting around the room. "A woman came into Miller's Crossing this morning. Arrived on the stage from Omaha. She's been asking questions about a girl and a baby, about where they might have gone." Emma's blood went cold. "What kind of woman?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Well-dressed, city clothes, sharp eyes." Ruth looked at her with sympathy. "She said her name was Cordelia Whitfield, said she was looking for her nieces." The room tilted. Emma grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. "She found us," she whispered. "She found us." Jacob moved to her side immediately. "Ruth, where is this woman now?" "At the hotel, asking anyone who'll listen if they've seen two girls matching your description." Ruth's voice dropped. "Jacob, the whole town's talking. Mrs. Crawford's already told her about you taking in strangers. It's only a matter of time before she finds her way here." Emma felt her legs go weak. All those miles, all that suffering, all for nothing. "Hey." Jacob's hand gripped her shoulder firm and steady. "Look at me." She looked up. His eyes were hard, determined. "She ain't taking you anywhere. You hear me? I don't care who she is or what she claims. You and Rosie are under my roof, my protection, and I don't give up what's mine." "But she's family. Blood family. The law says a lot of things. Don't mean it's right." Jacob turned to Ruth. "How long do we have?" "A day, maybe two. She's been traveling hard. She'll need to rest before she comes out here." "Then we got time to prepare." He looked at Emma. "You trust me." She didn't hesitate. "Yes." "Then trust me now. We're gonna fight this, together." Ruth stepped forward. "I'll help however I can. So will others. Reverend Webb, the Coopers. Even old Tom Richter said he'd stand for you if it came to it." "They'd do that." Emma's voice cracked. "For us. Child, you've been here less than 2 weeks, and you've already become part of this community. That counts for something." Ruth squeezed her hand. "That counts for a lot." Jacob was already moving, his mind racing. "Ruth, I need you to get word to Judge Patterson in Kearney. Tell him I need to file for legal guardianship. Emergency petition." "Guardianship?" Emma stared at him. "You'd do that?" "Should have done it the day you walked through my gate." He met her eyes. "I ain't losing you, Emma. Not to her. Not to anyone." For the first time since Ruth's arrival, Emma felt the tight band around her chest loosen. Just a little. "What do I do?" "You do what you've been doing. Take care of Rosie. Keep the house running. And when that woman shows up..." Jacob's voice hardened. "You let me handle her." Ruth left within the hour, promising to send word the moment she learned anything more. Jacob spent the rest of the day in restless motion, checking the property, securing the barn, making sure everything was in order. Emma watched him from the window, Rosie drowsing against her shoulder. "He's scared," she whispered to her sister. "He's trying not to show it, but he's scared. For us." Rosie gurgled softly, completely unaware of the storm gathering around them. "I won't let her take you," Emma said fiercely. "I don't care what it costs. I won't let her separate us. Not ever." That night, sleep wouldn't come. Emma lay in the dark, listening to Rosie's soft breathing, her mind racing through every terrible possibility. Cordelia arriving at dawn, a sheriff with papers, Rosie screaming as she was torn from Emma's arms. She couldn't go through it again. She couldn't. A soft knock at her door. "Emma." Jacob's voice quiet. "You awake?" "Yeah." The door opened. He stood there in the dim light looking older than his years. "Can't sleep either?" "No." He crossed to the bed and sat on the edge. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I've been thinking," Jacob said finally, "about what happens if she does get here before the paperwork goes through. And I need you to know something." He turned to look at her, his eyes fierce. "Whatever happens tomorrow, or the day after, or the day after that, you got a home here. Always. That ain't gonna change. Not because of some woman from Omaha. Not because of anything." Emma felt tears burning in her eyes. "You can't promise that. You don't know what she'll do, what she'll say." "I know what I'll do. What I'll say." Jacob reached out and took her hand. "Emma, I ain't been much good at keeping people. Lost my wife. Lost my son. Spent 3 years feeling sorry for myself while this place fell apart around me." His voice cracked. "But then you showed up. You and Rosie. And you reminded me what it means to fight for something. To care about something." "Jacob, let me finish." He squeezed her hand. "You asked me once why I opened the door that day. The real reason. And I told you it was because of Maggie. Because she would have wanted me to." "I remember." That was true. But it wasn't the whole truth. He met her eyes. "The whole truth is, I was dying, Emma. Slowly, day by day. And when I saw you standing there, frozen, starving, holding that baby like your life depended on it, something woke up inside me. Something I thought was gone forever." "What?" "Hope." His voice was barely a whisper. "You gave me hope." Emma threw her arms around him, burying her face against his chest. He held her tight, this broken man, who had somehow become the closest thing to a father she'd ever known. "I won't let her take us," Emma said fiercely. "I'll fight. I'll run. I'll do whatever it takes." "You won't have to run." Jacob's voice was firm. "Not anymore. This is your home now, and I protect what's mine." They stayed like that for a long moment, two people holding on to each other in the darkness, waiting for the storm to break. The storm came 2 days later. Emma was in the kitchen when she heard the wagon approaching. Her hands froze over the bread dough. Her heart stopped. "Jacob," she called, her voice tight. "Someone's coming." He was beside her in an instant, looking out the window. His face went hard. "Stay inside. Keep Rosie quiet." "Jacob." "Stay inside, Emma." He grabbed his coat and walked out onto the porch, closing the door behind him. Emma rushed to the window, her heart hammering. A hired wagon was rolling up the long drive. A woman sat in the back, city clothes, sharp eyes, face pinched with cold and determination. Cordelia. Emma watched as her aunt climbed down from the wagon, brushing dust from her skirts. She looked older than Emma remembered. Harder. Jacob stood on the porch, arms crossed, blocking the way to the house. "Help you, ma'am? Mr. Hartwell, I presume?" Cordelia's voice carried across the yard. "I'm Cordelia Whitfield. I believe you have something that belongs to me." "Got a lot of things. You'll have to be more specific. Don't play games with me." Cordelia stepped forward. "My nieces, Emma and Rosalie Whitmore. I know they're here." "They're here. They're safe. They're staying. I'm their legal guardian. I have papers. Papers that say what? That you put 2 children on a coach to an orphanage in the middle of December. That you gave a 10-year-old girl a few dollars and told her to find her own way." Jacob's voice was ice. "Those papers." Cordelia's face flushed. "I did what I had to do. My circumstances. Your circumstances ain't my concern. Emma and Rosie are. You have no right to keep them from me. And you got no right to take them. Not after what you did." Emma couldn't stay inside any longer. She pushed through the door, Rosie clutched against her chest. "You don't want us," she said, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. "You never wanted us. So why are you here?" Cordelia's expression flickered. "Emma, you're looking better. Because someone actually took care of us, fed us, kept us warm." Emma lifted her chin. "Something you didn't bother to do. I had no choice. You had plenty of choices. You chose to send us away." "This isn't the time for childish dramatics." Cordelia's voice sharpened. "You're coming with me, both of you, now." "No. You don't get to say no. I'm your guardian." "You're not her guardian." Jacob stepped between them. "Not anymore." Cordelia's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" "I filed for legal guardianship 3 days ago. Judge Patterson in Kearney has the papers." Jacob's voice was flat. "As of now, Emma and Rosie are in my custody, pending a hearing." Cordelia's face went white. "You can't do that." "Already did. I'll fight it. You're a stranger, a bachelor. You have no claim." "I have more claim than someone who abandoned 2 children in winter." Jacob stepped forward and Cordelia stepped back. "I found them. I took them in. I cared for them when you wouldn't. The court will never. The court will hear what Emma has to say, what the townspeople have to say, what Ruth Brennan and Reverend Webb and a dozen other witnesses have to say." Jacob's voice dropped. "And then they'll decide who deserves to raise these girls." Cordelia stood very still. Her eyes darted between Jacob and Emma, calculating. "This isn't over," she said finally. "I'll be at that hearing. And when I prove that these children belong with family, real family, you'll have nothing. Real family don't abandon children in winter." Emma's voice rang out clear and strong. "Real family shows up. Real family fights." Cordelia stared at her for a long moment. Her niece stared back unflinching. "You'll regret this," Cordelia said quietly. "Both of you." "Only thing I regret," Emma replied, "is believing you'd ever be anything more than what you are." Cordelia's mouth twisted. She turned without another word and climbed back into the wagon. Jacob and Emma watched until it disappeared over the horizon. Then Jacob let out a long breath. "That went well." Emma looked at him incredulous. "That's your idea of well. She's gone, ain't she? We're still here." "She'll be back. With lawyers. With papers. Let her." Jacob put his arm around her shoulders. "We got something she don't." "What's that?" "Each other." He squeezed her tight. "And a whole town willing to fight for us." Emma leaned into him, feeling the weight of the confrontation settling over her. But underneath the fear, underneath the uncertainty, something else was growing. Strength. Determination. The fierce, stubborn refusal to give up. "Jacob, yeah. Thank you for standing up for us. Didn't do anything you weren't already doing." He looked down at her with something like pride. "Way you faced her down, your mama would be proud." Emma felt tears threatening. "You think so?" "I know so." He turned toward the house. "Come on, we got work to do. Hearing's in 2 weeks and we need to be ready." They walked inside together, a man who had lost everything, and a girl who had refused to give up preparing for the fight of their lives. And somewhere on the road back to town, Cordelia Whitfield was already planning her next move. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. Jacob met with Judge Patterson twice, going over the guardianship documents, explaining the circumstances. Emma wrote out her testimony 3 times, practicing until she could tell her story without her voice shaking. Ruth Brennan organized the community. One by one, people came forward to speak on their behalf. The Coopers, who had watched Emma handle Rosie at church. Old Tom Richter, who had seen Jacob smiling for the first time in years. Even Mrs. Crawford, the very woman who had whispered about impropriety, showed up at the farm one evening with a basket of food and an apology. "I was wrong about you," she said stiffly, not quite meeting Emma's eyes. About both of you. I hope the judge sees what I was too blind to see. Emma accepted the basket. Thank you, ma'am. That means a lot. The night before the hearing, Emma couldn't sleep. She sat by the fire, Rosie dozing in her arms, watching the flames dance. Jacob found her there past midnight. Should be resting, he said quietly. Can't. He sat down across from her. Scared. Terrified. Good. At her surprised look, he continued. Means you understand what's at stake. Means you'll fight harder. What if we lose? We won't. But what if we do? What if the judge decides blood matters more than anything else? Jacob leaned forward. You remember what you told me that night I wrote to William. I told you a lot of things. You told me that the bravest thing you can do is open a door. He met her eyes. Tomorrow we open another one. Whatever's on the other side, we face it together. Emma felt tears spilling down her cheeks. She didn't try to stop them. I'm glad I found you, she whispered. I'm glad your door was the one that opened. Me too, Emma. Jacob's voice cracked. Me too. They sat together until the fire burned low, until the first gray light of dawn crept through the windows. Then they got up, got dressed, and went to fight for their family. The courthouse was packed. Emma had never seen so many people in one place. They filled every bench, lined the walls, spilled out into the hallway. Some faces she recognized from church. Others were strangers. All of them were watching her. Ruth Brennan squeezed her hand. Breathe, child. Just breathe. Emma tried. The air felt thick, heavy. Jacob sat beside her, his back straight, his jaw set. He hadn't said a word since they'd arrived. But his hand found hers under the table and held on tight. Across the aisle, Cordelia sat with her lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit who kept shuffling papers and whispering in her ear. She didn't look at Emma, didn't acknowledge her at all. Good, Emma thought. Let her pretend I don't exist. I'll make sure the judge knows different. All rise. The room stood as Judge Patterson entered. He was an older man with sharp eyes and a stern face, and he looked at both parties with equal suspicion. Be seated. He settled into his chair and opened a folder. We're here to determine custody of Emma Catherine Whitmore, age 10, and Rosalie Ann Whitmore, age 5 months. Mrs. Cordelia Whitfield claims guardianship as next of kin. Mr. Jacob Hartwell has filed a competing petition. He looked up. Mrs. Whitfield, your counsel may proceed. Cordelia's lawyer rose smoothly. Thank you, Your Honor. My client is the maternal aunt of these children. Their mother, Harriet Whitmore, was her only sister. When Mrs. Whitmore passed away in October, my client graciously took the children into her home. Graciously, Emma muttered under her breath. Jacob squeezed her hand. Warning. The lawyer continued. Unfortunately, circumstances beyond my client's control made it impossible to provide long-term care. She made arrangements for the children to be placed in a reputable institution where their needs could be properly met. She put us on a coach, Emma whispered fiercely. In December, with nothing. Emma. Jacob's voice was low. Not yet. The lawyer droned on about family bonds and blood ties and the sacred responsibility of kinship. Emma felt her hands shaking with rage. Everything he said was true technically, and everything he said was a lie. When he finally sat down, Judge Patterson turned to Jacob. Mr. Hartwell, your response? Jacob stood slowly. He wasn't a lawyer, didn't have fancy words or legal training. But when he spoke, his voice carried through the silent courtroom. Your Honor, I ain't gonna stand here and tell you I got more right to these girls than their blood family. I ain't related to them. Never met them before 3 weeks ago. He paused. But I'm gonna tell you what I saw when Emma Whitmore showed up at my door. He turned to look at Emma. His eyes were bright. I saw a 10-year-old girl with no shoes, frostbite on her feet, holding a baby that hadn't eaten in 2 days. She'd walked 40 miles through a blizzard because every other door she knocked on was closed in her face. His voice hardened. 40 miles. In December, because the woman sitting over there gave her a few dollars and told her to find her own way. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Judge Patterson held up a hand for silence. I took them in, Jacob continued. Fed them, gave them a warm place to sleep, and in the 3 weeks since Emma Whitmore has worked harder than any grown adult I know. She cooks, she cleans. She takes care of her sister like she's been doing it her whole life. He met the judge's eyes. Because she has been. Since she was 9 years old. Since her mama got sick and there was nobody else to do it. Your Honor. Cordelia's lawyer started to rise. Sit down. The judge's voice was sharp. Mr. Hartwell has the floor. Jacob nodded his thanks. I ain't a perfect man. Lost my wife 3 years ago. Lost my son before that. Spent a long time feeling sorry for myself. But when Emma showed up at my gate, something changed. She reminded me what it means to fight for something, to care about something. He turned to face Cordelia directly. Mrs. Whitfield says she wants these children back, but she didn't come looking for 3 weeks. 3 weeks, Your Honor. That little girl was out there in the cold, starving, desperate, and her aunt was sitting in Omaha doing nothing. That's not true. Cordelia shot to her feet. I didn't know where they were, because you put them on a coach and forgot about them. Jacob's voice thundered through the room. You didn't check if they arrived, didn't send word ahead, didn't do anything a decent person would do. Order. Judge Patterson banged his gavel. Both of you sit down, now. Cordelia sank back into her chair, her face flushed. Jacob remained standing, breathing hard. Mr. Hartwell, the judge said quietly. Are you finished? Almost. Jacob turned back to face him. Your Honor, I ain't asking you to give me these children because I deserve them. I'm asking you to let them stay because they deserve better. Better than being abandoned. Better than being treated like a burden. Better than being sent away because they're inconvenient. He sat down heavily. Emma grabbed his hand and held on tight. We'll take a brief recess, Judge Patterson announced. When we return, I'll hear from the children's representative. The room erupted in whispers as people stood and stretched. Ruth Brennan hurried over with water. The Coopers patted Jacob on the shoulder. Even strangers nodded in their direction, their expressions sympathetic. But Emma barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on the door at the back of the courtroom, where a figure had just appeared. A tall man, dark hair, serious eyes. Her breath caught. Jacob, she whispered. Jacob, look. He turned and went absolutely still. William Hartwell stood in the doorway, travel-worn and exhausted, clutching a leather bag in one hand. Pa, he said, his voice cracking. I got your letter. The courtroom fell silent. Jacob rose slowly, his legs unsteady. William, I came as fast as I could. William stepped forward, his eyes sweeping the room, the crowd, the judge's bench, his father's stunned face. What's going on? Ruth Brennan sent word there was a hearing, but she didn't say, William. Jacob's voice broke. You came. Of course I came. William crossed the remaining distance and stopped in front of his father. They stood there inches apart, 5 years of silence hanging between them. I read your letter, every word, and I got on the first train I could find. I didn't think, Jacob swallowed hard. I didn't think you'd want to hear from me. I've been waiting 5 years for you to reach out. William's eyes were wet. 5 years, Pa. I thought you'd never forgive me for leaving. Forgive you? Jacob let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. I've been begging God to forgive me. For the things I said. For driving you away. You didn't drive me anywhere. I chose to leave. I was young and stupid, and you were right. Jacob grabbed his son's shoulders. You were right to go, to find your own way. I was just too scared to see it. Father and son stared at each other. Then William pulled Jacob into a fierce embrace. I missed you, Pa, every single day. I missed you too, son, more than I can say. Emma watched through tears, her heart so full it ached. Rosie squirmed in Ruth's arms, letting out a happy gurgle, completely unaware of the miracle unfolding before them. Judge Patterson cleared his throat. "I take it this is the son you mentioned, Mr. Hartwell?" Jacob pulled back from the embrace, his face wet but shining. "Yes, Your Honor. This is William, my boy." "I gathered." The judge's expression had softened just slightly. "Mr. William Hartwell, I don't suppose you'd be willing to offer testimony in this matter." William straightened. "What do you need to know?" "Everything, starting with why you're here." William looked at Emma, really looked at her for the first time. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a thick folder. "Your Honor, I work in Chicago now. I got friends in places. When I received my father's letter, I did some digging." He held up the folder. "What I found might interest you." Cordelia's lawyer shot to his feet. "Objection. This is highly irregular." "Sit down." Judge Patterson's voice was ice. "I'll decide what's irregular in my courtroom." He turned to William. "Continue." William opened the folder. "Mrs. Cordelia Whitfield's husband, Walter, has been in financial trouble for the past 18 months. Bad investments, gambling debts. They've been selling assets just to stay afloat." Emma frowned. What did this have to do with anything? "Furthermore," William continued, "I discovered that Harriet Whitmore, Emma's mother, inherited property in Missouri from her mother, a small parcel of farmland. The deed passed to her daughters upon her death." Emma's head snapped up. "What? You didn't know?" William looked at her with sympathy. "Your grandmother left land to your mother. It's not worth much on its own, maybe a few $100s. But there's been talk of the railroad expanding through that area. If that happens, the land could be worth thousands." The courtroom erupted. Judge Patterson banged his gavel repeatedly. "Order! Order!" Emma turned to look at Cordelia. Her aunt's face had gone chalk white. "She doesn't want us," Emma said slowly, the pieces falling into place. "She wants the land. She wants what we can give her." "That's a lie." Cordelia jumped to her feet. "I came here because I care about those children." "Then why didn't you come sooner?" William's voice was calm but cutting. "Why wait 3 weeks? Why let a 10-year-old wander through a blizzard while you sat comfortable in Omaha? I didn't know where they were. You didn't try to find out." Emma was on her feet now, too trembling with rage. "You put us on that coach and forgot we existed. You only came looking when you realized what we're worth." "Emma." Jacob reached for her. "No." She pulled away, facing her aunt directly. "You looked at me and Rosie and saw a burden, an inconvenience, something to get rid of, but the second you heard about that land, suddenly you care." Her voice cracked. "My mama loved you. She trusted you. And you threw us away like garbage." Cordelia's mouth opened and closed. For the first time, she had no response. Judge Patterson stood. The room went silent. "I've heard enough." His voice was heavy. "Mrs. Whitfield, the evidence presented today paints a troubling picture. You took in your sister's children, then sent them away with minimal provisions and no follow-up. You made no effort to ensure their safety. And now the timing of your sudden interest in their welfare seems convenient." Cordelia's lawyer tried to interrupt. "Your Honor, I'm not finished." The judge's eyes were hard. Mr. Hartwell, on the other hand, opened his home to 2 strangers in need. He provided food, shelter, and care. He filed for guardianship at his own expense. And the testimony from this community suggests that Emma and Rosalie have not only survived under his care, they've thrived. He paused, looking at Emma. "Miss Whitmore, I'd like to hear from you directly. In your own words, tell me where you want to be." Emma stood slowly. Her legs shook. Her heart pounded. But her voice came out clear and strong. "Your Honor, my aunt doesn't want me. She never did. She wants what she thinks I can give her." Emma lifted her chin. "But Jacob, Mr. Hartwell, he doesn't want anything from me. He just wants me to be happy, to be safe, to have a chance." She looked at Jacob, at William, at Ruth and the Coopers, and all the people who had shown up to fight for her. "I want to stay," she said. "With Jacob, with my family." "Family?" Judge Patterson raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Hartwell isn't your blood relation." "No, sir. But my mama always said family ain't about blood. It's about the people who show up, the people who stay." Emma's voice broke. "Jacob showed up. He stayed. That makes him my family." The courtroom was absolutely silent. Judge Patterson looked at Emma for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Based on the testimony presented, and in consideration of the children's welfare, I am granting full legal guardianship of Emma Catherine Whitmore and Rosalie Ann Whitmore to Jacob Hartwell, effective immediately." Emma couldn't breathe. "Mrs. Whitfield's petition is denied. Furthermore, I'm ordering a review of the Whitmore estate to ensure the children's inheritance is properly protected." He banged his gavel. "This court is adjourned." The room exploded. People were shouting, crying, rushing forward. Ruth Brennan grabbed Emma in a fierce hug. The Coopers were pumping Jacob's hand. William was grinning through tears. And across the room, Cordelia Whitfield stood alone, her face twisted with fury. She caught Emma's eye for just a moment. Emma held her gaze, didn't flinch, didn't look away. Then Cordelia turned and walked out of the courtroom, and Emma knew she would never see her again. "We did it." Jacob's voice was hoarse. "We actually did it." Emma threw her arms around him, burying her face against his chest. "We did it. You did it." He held her tight. "That speech, your mama would be so proud." "I just told the truth. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to do." William appeared beside them, Rosie cradled carefully in his arms. The baby was grabbing at his collar, completely content. "She's beautiful," he said softly. "Looks just like Ma, don't she?" Jacob's breath caught. Yeah, she does." Emma looked at them, Jacob and William and Rosie, and felt something break open in her chest. Something that had been clenched tight for months, years maybe. "Jacob." "Yeah." She hesitated. The word sat on her tongue, terrifying and precious and necessary. "Can I?" She swallowed. "Can I call you Pa?" Jacob went very still. William's eyes went wide. The noise of the courtroom faded to nothing. "You want to call me Pa?" Jacob's voice was barely a whisper. If that's all right. I know you're not my real father. I know I'm not really your daughter. But, Emma." He knelt down so they were eye to eye. His face was wet with tears. "You've been my daughter since the day you walked through my gate, since you looked me in the eye and asked for work instead of charity, since you showed me what it means to be brave. Really, really." He pulled her into his arms. "I'd be honored if you called me Pa, more than honored." Emma pressed her face against his shoulder and let the tears come. All the fear, all the grief, all the desperate hope of the past months, it all came pouring out. And for the first time in her life, she had someone to catch her. "Welcome to the family, little sister," William said softly. Emma looked up at him through her tears. "Little sister." "That's what you are now, right?" He grinned. "Pa's daughter is my sister. That's how it works." "I never had a brother before." "Well, you got one now, and I'm gonna spoil you and Rosie rotten." He tickled the baby's chin. "Both of you. Just you wait." Ruth Brennan bustled over, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "Oh, would you look at us, all crying like babies in the middle of a courthouse." "Happy tears?" Emma said. "The best kind." "The very best." Ruth pulled her into a hug. "I'm so proud of you, child. So proud." The celebration spilled out onto the courthouse steps, then into the street. People Emma barely knew came up to congratulate her, to shake Jacob's hand, to coo over Rosie. Mrs. Crawford was there crying openly, telling anyone who would listen that she'd always known things would work out. "She was the one gossiping about us 2 weeks ago," Emma muttered to William. He laughed. "Small towns, they turn on a dime." "You staying?" Emma asked. "Here, I mean, on the farm." William was quiet for a moment. "That's what I came back to find out, if there was still a place for me." "There's always been a place for you." Jacob's voice came from behind them. "Always, son. I was just too stupid to say it." William turned to face his father. "I got things to settle in Chicago, a job to quit, an apartment to clear out." "How long?" "Month maybe, could be less." Jacob nodded slowly. "And after that?" "After that." William took a deep breath. "After that, I'd like to come home, for good this time. If you'll have me." "If I'll have you." Jacob's voice cracked. "Boy, I've been waiting 5 years for you to say those words." They embraced again, right there on the courthouse steps, while the whole town watched and cheered. Emma stood beside Ruth Rosie, in her arms, watching her family come back together. "You did this," Ruth said softly. "You know that, right? All of this happened because you showed up at that gate." "I was just trying to survive." "You were doing more than that. You were fighting. For yourself, for your sister, for a chance at something better." Ruth squeezed her shoulder. "That takes courage, child. Real courage." Emma looked at Jacob and William, still holding on to each other like they were afraid to let go. "I didn't do it alone." "No," Ruth smiled. "That's the point. None of us do. That's what family is. That's what community is. We show up for each other. We fight for each other." She nodded toward Jacob. "He showed up for you. Now you've shown up for him." The ride home felt different. They crowded into the wagon, Jacob and William in front, Emma and Ruth and Rosie in back. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. "Looks like heaven," Emma murmured. "Looks like home," Jacob said quietly. When they reached the farm, Emma saw it with new eyes. The house that had seemed half dead when she first arrived now looked warm and welcoming. The crooked gate stood open the way Jacob always kept it. "Why do you leave it open?" she asked. "The gate." Jacob climbed down from the wagon and turned to help her. "Because you never know who might need to walk through, and I want them to know they're welcome." Emma stepped down Rosie, secure in her arms. She looked at the gate, then at Jacob, then at William. "Thank you," she said, "for opening it for us." "Thank you for walking through." Jacob put his arm around her shoulders. "Now come on, let's go home." They walked toward the house together, a father who had lost everything, a son who had found his way back, and a girl who had refused to give up. And behind them, the gate stood open, waiting for whoever might need it next. The weeks after the hearing passed like a dream. William stayed for 3 days, helping around the farm, getting to know Emma and Rosie, rebuilding the bridge that had been broken for 5 years. Then he left for Chicago, promising to return within a month. "I'll be back before you know it," he said, hugging Emma tight. "You keep Pa out of trouble while I'm gone." "I'll try. He's stubborn. Runs in the family." William grinned. "You'll fit right in." Jacob drove him to the train station, and Emma watched from the porch until the wagon disappeared over the horizon. Rosie squirmed in her arms, reaching for something only she could see. "He's coming back," Emma whispered. "I know he is." And he did. 3 weeks later, William's wagon rolled up the drive, loaded with furniture tools and everything he owned. He moved into his old room, the room Emma had slept in that first night, and fell into the rhythm of farm life like he'd never left. "Feels strange," he admitted one evening sitting on the porch with Emma while Jacob put Rosie to bed. "Being back here. Everything's the same, but different. Good different or bad different? Good." He smiled. "Definitely good." Spring came slowly, thawing the frozen ground, coaxing green shoots from the brown earth. Emma helped with the planting, learning to read the soil and the sky, to predict rain and frost, to work alongside Jacob and William until her hands were calloused and her shoulders ached. She had never been happier. "You're a natural," Jacob said one afternoon, watching her guide the plow with steady hands. "Maggie would have loved working with you." "Tell me about her," Emma said. "Tell me something you haven't told me before." Jacob was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled. "She used to sing while she worked. Hymns mostly, but sometimes silly songs she made up, about chickens and cows and whatever caught her fancy." His voice softened. "William used to follow her around the house, begging her to sing the one about the dancing pig. There was a song about a dancing pig. She wrote it when he was 3. He loved that pig." Jacob shook his head. "I haven't thought about that in years." "You should ask William if he remembers." "Maybe I will." That night at dinner, Jacob cleared his throat. "William, you remember that song your ma used to sing about the dancing pig?" William's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. His eyes went wide. "I haven't thought about that in—" He trailed off. "How did you—" "Emma asked me to tell her something about Maggie, something I hadn't told her before." Jacob's voice cracked. "That's what came to mind." William set down his fork. For a long moment he didn't speak. Then he started to hum. It was a simple tune, silly almost. But as the melody filled the kitchen, something shifted in the air. Jacob's eyes went bright. Emma felt tears threatening, and then William started to sing. "Old Pig Barnaby loved to dance, he'd kick his hooves and prance and prance." Jacob laughed a real laugh, full and warm. "That's it, that's the one." "Mama used to bounce me on her knee while she sang it." William's voice was thick. I'd forgotten so much." "We all did." Jacob reached across the table and gripped his son's hand. "But we're remembering now. That's what matters." Emma looked between them, father and son, broken and healing, and felt her heart swell. This was family. This was home. Summer arrived with long days and hard work. Rosie grew faster than seemed possible, her first tooth coming in her first word M, making Emma cry with joy. "She said my name." Emma burst into the barn where Jacob was fixing a saddle. "Pa, she said my name." Jacob dropped his tools and followed her back to the house where Rosie was sitting on a blanket babbling happily. "Say it again, Rosie girl." Emma knelt down in front of her sister. "Say M." Rosie looked at her with those big bright eyes. Then she grinned a toothy grin and said clear as day, "Emma!" Jacob let out a whoop that startled the chickens. 2 syllables. He scooped Rosie up and swung her around. "That's my smart girl. 2 whole syllables. Pa, careful." Emma laughed. "You'll make her dizzy." "She loves it. Look at her." Rosie was shrieking with delight, her tiny hands grabbing at Jacob's face. Emma watched them, her heart so full it hurt. "Your mama would be proud," Jacob said softly, settling Rosie against his shoulder. "Of both of you." "I hope so. I know so." He reached out and pulled Emma close, wrapping his free arm around her. "I know so." William found them like that when he came in from the fields, Jacob holding Rosie. Emma tucked against his side, all 3 of them crying and laughing at the same time. "What did I miss?" Rosie said Emma's name. "No kidding." William grinned. "What about Uncle Will? Can she say that?" "Give her time," Emma said. "She's only 11 months old. Never too early to learn who her favorite uncle is." "You're her only uncle." "Exactly. Favorite by default." They ate dinner together that night, the 4 of them crowded around the table that had once been so empty. Jacob said grace, something he hadn't done since Maggie died, and Emma felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. This was what she had walked 40 miles to find. This was what she had fought for, and she would never ever take it for granted. Fall came with harvest and celebration. The town held its annual festival, and for the first time in years, Jacob agreed to attend. You sure about this? William asked as they loaded the wagon. Lot of people, lot of talking. I'm sure. Jacob lifted Rosie into Emma's arms. Time to stop hiding. Time to be part of things again. The festival was everything Emma had imagined and more. Music and dancing and food she'd never tasted. Children running everywhere. Adults laughing and talking and catching up after months of hard work. Ruth Brennan found them immediately. Emma, look at you. She pulled Emma into a hug. You've grown 3 inches at least. Good food and hard work, Jacob said proudly. She's strong as an ox. And twice as stubborn, William added. Look who's talking, Emma shot back. Mrs. Crawford approached, looking nervous. Mr. Hartwell, Emma, I wanted to, that is, I hoped. She took a breath. I owe you an apology, both of you, for the things I said, the way I acted. Jacob studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Water under the bridge, Adelaide. We've all done things we regret. That's generous of you. It's honest. He looked at Emma. Someone taught me that holding on to grudges don't help nobody, just makes the hole deeper. Mrs. Crawford's eyes went to Emma. She taught you that? She teaches me a lot of things. Jacob's voice was warm. Every day. The festival continued late into the evening. Emma danced with William, then with Jacob, then with a boy from town who turned bright red when she said yes. She ate until her stomach hurt and laughed until her face ached. As the sun set, she found a quiet spot at the edge of the celebration and sat down to catch her breath. Rosie was asleep in Ruth's arms. Jacob and William were talking with a group of farmers about next year's crops. You look happy. Emma turned. Reverend Webb stood beside her, his kind eyes crinkling with a smile. I am happy, she said. Happier than I ever thought I could be. You've come a long way from that girl who walked through Jacob's gate. Sometimes it feels like that was a different person. Maybe it was. The Reverend sat down beside her. The Bible talks about being born again, about old things passing away and all things becoming new. He looked out at the celebration. I think that's what happened to you, and to Jacob. He saved my life. And you saved his. Reverend Webb smiled. That's how it works. We save each other. We carry each other's burdens. We walk together through the dark until we find the light. Emma thought about that first night, the frozen feet, the dying baby, the door that had opened when all the others had closed. I was so scared, she whispered. So scared I'd made the wrong choice, that I should have stayed on that coach, gone to the orphanage like Aunt Cordelia wanted. And now I know. She looked at Jacob, at William, at Rosie sleeping peacefully in Ruth's arms. I know I made the right choice, the only choice. How do you know? Emma smiled. Because I found my family. The first anniversary came faster than anyone expected. Emma woke on the morning of December 15th to find the house quiet, the fire already burning, and a small package sitting on the kitchen table. What's this? Jacob looked up from his coffee. Open it. She unwrapped the package carefully. Inside was a locket, silver old polished until it gleamed. She opened it and found 2 small photographs. Her mother on one side, herself on the other. Her breath caught. Where did you get this? The photograph of your mama was in your things. Had the tinsmith in town make it small enough to fit. Jacob cleared his throat. The locket was Maggie's. She would have wanted you to have it. Emma couldn't speak. She held the locket against her chest and felt tears streaming down her face. Pa, I know it ain't much. It's everything. She threw her arms around him. It's everything. William appeared in the doorway holding something behind his back. Am I too late for the gift giving? What have you got there? He stepped aside, revealing a small chestnut mare with a white blaze on her forehead. Emma's mouth fell open. Her name's Penny, William said. She's yours. Mine? Every girl should have a horse. Jacob's voice was rough. Maggie always said so. Emma walked down the steps in a daze. The mare nickered softly and pushed her nose against Emma's hand. She's beautiful, Emma whispered. She's steady, good-tempered, perfect for learning to ride. William grinned. I'll teach you if you want. I want. Emma stroked Penny's neck. I want all of it. Then it's yours. Jacob came to stand beside her. All of it. The horse, the farm, the family. It's yours, Emma, for as long as you want it. She looked up at him, this man who had been so broken when she found him, who had somehow put himself back together and helped her do the same. Forever, she said. I want it forever. Then forever it is. That night, after Rosie was asleep and William had gone to his room, Emma sat with Jacob by the fire. Pa. Yeah. Can I ask you something? Always. She hesitated. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't knocked on your door? Jacob was quiet for a long moment. I try not to, he finally said. Because the truth is, Emma, I was dying. Slowly, day by day. I'd stopped caring about anything. The farm, the town, myself. He met her eyes. If you hadn't shown up when you did, I don't know if I'd have made it through another winter. Really? Really? His voice cracked. You saved my life, Emma, just by being brave enough to knock, just by asking for a chance. You gave me that chance. We gave each other chances. He reached over and took her hand. That's what family does. Emma leaned against him, feeling his warmth, his strength, his love. I miss Mama, she said softly. Every day. I know. But I'm glad I found you. I'm glad Rosie will grow up here with you and William. With a real family. She's lucky to have you for a sister. I'm lucky to have her. Emma smiled. I'm lucky to have all of you. They sat together until the fire burned low, until the house settled into its evening quiet. And somewhere in Missouri, on a small piece of farmland that now belonged to two girls who had walked through fire to find their way home, the first snow of winter began to fall. 10 years later, Emma stood at the gate. She was 20 years old now, a woman grown. Her mother's locket hung around her neck. Penny grazed in the pasture behind her. And inside the house, Rosie was helping Jacob set the table for Sunday dinner. You all right out here? William appeared beside her, his dark hair streaked with gray, now his face weathered from years of farm work. Just thinking. About the day I arrived. Emma touched the gatepost. I was so scared, so tired. I didn't think anyone would help us. But someone did. Pa did. She smiled. And then you did. And Ruth. And the whole town. That's what people do. When they're given the chance to be good. Emma looked at her brother, because that's what he was in every way that mattered. I'm glad you came back, she said. I'm glad you didn't let pride keep you away forever. I'm glad a 10-year-old girl showed my father how to forgive. William put his arm around her. We all owe you, Emma. More than you know. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything. His voice was fierce. You gave me my father back. You gave Rosie a childhood. You gave this whole family a second chance. I just knocked on a door. You did more than that. William turned her to face him. You showed up when it would have been easier to give up. You fought when everyone else had stopped fighting. You believed when there was nothing left to believe in. Emma felt tears threatening. After all these years, the emotion still caught her off guard. Mama would be proud, she whispered. Don't you think? I know she would. William pulled her into a hug. I know she is. The door opened. Rosie's voice rang out across the yard. Emma, William, dinner's ready. Pa says if you don't come now, he's giving your portions to the chickens. Emma laughed. We're coming. She took one last look at the gate. The same gate she'd pushed through 10 years ago, frozen and desperate and clinging to hope. It stood open now, the way Jacob always kept it, because you never knew who might need to walk through, and they wanted everyone to know they were welcome. "Come on." William tugged her arm. "Before Pa actually feeds our dinner to the chickens." They walked toward the house together, toward the warmth and the laughter, and the family waiting inside. Rosie met them at the door, all flying braids and bright eyes. "What took you so long?" "We were talking." "About what?" Emma smiled and pulled her sister close. "About how lucky we are." Dinner was chaos and joy the way it always was. Jacob told stories about Maggie. William teased Rosie about her cooking. Emma laughed until her sides hurt. And when the meal was over and the dishes were cleared, they gathered in the front room the way they did every Sunday night. "Pa." Rosie settled onto the floor at Jacob's feet. "Tell us the story again." "Which story?" "The one about Emma. About when she first came here." Jacob looked at Emma. His eyes were bright. "You want to tell it?" he asked. "It's your story after all." Emma shook her head. "It's our story. All of us." Jacob nodded slowly. Then he began. 10 years ago, in the middle of December, a girl knocked on my door. She was 10 years old, barefoot in the snow, holding a baby who hadn't eaten in 2 days. She'd walked 40 miles through a blizzard because every other door had closed in her face. Emma listened to the words she'd heard 100 times before. The story of how she'd arrived, how Jacob had taken her in, how William had come home, how Cordelia had tried to take them away, how the town had rallied around them, how they'd become a family. It was a good story, a true story. But it wasn't the whole story. The whole story was in the quiet moments. The mornings spent making breakfast together, the evenings by the fire, the birthdays and holidays and ordinary days that had added up to a life. The whole story was in Rosie's laughter, in William's steady presence, in Jacob's rough voice saying, "I love you," like it was the most natural thing in the world. The whole story was in this house, this family, this home that Emma had built with her own 2 hands. And that, Jacob finished, is how a broken old man and a brave little girl saved each other. Rosie clapped. "I love that story." "Me too, Bug." Jacob ruffled her hair. "Me too." Later, after Rosie and William had gone to bed, Emma sat with Jacob on the porch. The stars were out bright and endless against the dark sky. "Pa." "Yeah. Thank you." "For what?" "For everything." Emma's voice was steady. "For opening the door. For letting us stay. For being my father in every way that counts." Jacob reached over and took her hand. His grip was strong, warm, familiar. "Thank you," he said, "for having the courage to knock." They sat together in the darkness, father and daughter, watching the stars wheel overhead. And somewhere in the quiet of the Nebraska night, Emma Whitmore finally understood what her mother had been trying to teach her all along. Family wasn't about blood. It wasn't about names or papers or what the law said. Family was about the people who showed up, the people who stayed, the people who fought for you when you couldn't fight for yourself. Family was about love, pure and simple. And Emma Catherine Whitmore. Emma Catherine Hartwell had more love than she'd ever dreamed possible. The gate stood open. It always would. Because that's what home meant. An open door, a warm fire, a place where broken people could find healing, where lost souls could find belonging, where hope could survive even the darkest winter. Emma had walked through that gate with nothing but a prayer and a dying baby in her arms. She had found everything she ever needed on the other side, and that was the truest thing she knew.